Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Digital Tiny Room. I am Michael of Michaelandbenjaminspodcast, and I am joined digitally, as always, by the man who has been called the result of 800 years of oppression. It's Benjamin.
I am the result of 800 years of oppression, Michael, and I'm awful ticked about it. My goodness.
Look what it gets you. It gets you. A generation of Bens.
Spite.
Yeah.
In human form.
Ben, you're back after a brief sabbatical last week.
Yes, I took a break, Michael. I'd had enough of the podcast. That's not true. My lovely parents were here to visit me in Florence, and Michael very kindly allowed me to take it off.
And yes, I am now Ben's supervisor in the podcast. Apparently, I am the one responsible for deciding when he can do this voluntary thing on a week-by-week basis.
So I applied for the time off.
Yes.
Michael reviewed it.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, that's fine, but it earns you an extra 6 years on your sentence. So the podcast will be going 6 years longer than anticipated, ladies and gentlemen. But it's okay, because I got to see my parents.
Ben, the podcast has already been going about a year and a half longer than expected, I think.
Yeah, I think a full 76 episodes longer than expected.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say. Benjamin,
yes.
Shall you do you want to do the theme music?
Sure.
Theme music for the podcast. We don't actually have any theme music, but I hope someone will mix them up for us. I don't wanna name any names. Rachel, I hope it's Rachel.
Oh, very good. Shane flat out refused to do that last week, you'll remember.
I didn't like that, Michael. I thought perhaps he would take note of the customs here in our strange little tiny room land and maybe adhere to the cultural norms. But
no, Ben, quite like the imperialist British, he ran roughshod over our traditions.
Yeah, he stamped it out, some might say.
Yeah.
He attempted to, but we had little gatherings where we saved the language, Michael, and we came back. We rallied really in the face of such oppression and came out the other end.
Ben, speaking of rallying in the face of oppression,
yeah,
Daredevil has been cancelled. Does that work? don't think so.
In that we suffer under the tyranny of TV executives and their whims.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
meant. It doesn't belittle actual struggles for human rights or, fights against actual dictatorships or anything like that, Michael. It's perfectly fine.
No, but Ben, what I'm saying is that Marvel's Netflix Daredevils, certainly their most popular show critically, if not financially, has been cancelled.
Yeah, it's been let go. Look, Marvel is just severing ties, Michael. But believe it or not, I don't think it's Marvel.
Well, no, I don't think it's Marvel either. So I believe it. I believe it.
Marvel's just, or Netflix is just scrubbing the slate. Because rather interestingly, after this news broke, Michael, a Marvel executive here said that they had no idea that they would be cancelled. This was a surprise to those working on the producer team. It was which one? One of the producers, co-executive Sam Ernst, said that execs from Marvel Television were stunned when the word came down that Netflix wouldn't be renewing the show for a fourth season. This is more interesting because prior to this news, he had tweeted that they had been pitched season 4.
Right.
And they were really looking forward to it. They said it was going to be really cool. The exact phrasing was, so effing cool.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Ben, it's clearly Netflix getting ready for Disney Plus being their major competitor.
Yeah, they don't want to deal with that and pay for extra rights to the characters, I suppose. Disney up the cost. I mean, something like that.
It's always been lots. Who knows who owns characters and rights to characters and what sort of legal mumbo jumbo is happening in the background? We'll never know. Anyway, that's for sure.
Interestingly, apparently the tide of the Sony-Marvel merger is in question again because the last two properties they've released under the Spider-Man title, that being Venom and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, have been very successful for Sony. So Sony apparently is...
Into the Spider-Verse isn't out yet, is it?
It is in certain places and it's doing very well.
Is it?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh.
Figures.
Oh, we should probably talk about Spider-Man next week then.
In pre-sales alone, Michael, they're doing very well.
Yeah, I know. It is actually worrying. It's worrying how well Venom did, considering how relatively poor it was.
How little Spider-Man there is.
Yeah,
and how mediocre it was as a film.
I fear that it's doing very well internationally because, the old classic international, you don't have to speak English, things don't have to be terribly clever. Basically,
cool special
spectacle.
effects and, a white male actor that many people find attractive.
Shut up for a second, Ben. What were we talking about?
We were talking about how Daredevil has given us oppression by being cancelled.
Yeah, very good.
Major oppression.
It's clearly Netflix that are doing it. The showrunners, everyone seems to be shocked. Surely Jessica Jones is next.
I can't see how they'd possibly let it survive. Unless they're holding out for feminism points, but I doubt it.
I highly doubt it. I imagine that they... Ben, where's the production on Jessica Jones? I don't know. Have they made season 3?
One of the ones that I think they're mid-production.
Okay.
I don't think they'll cancel the show mid-production.
No, they're not that spiteful.
That'd be a giant waste of money.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm really upset about is there'll be no Punisher season 2, I don't think.
No, I think there will. I think that's already a go.
Has that wrapped?
I don't think it's wrapped, but I imagine...
See,
look, I won't be stunned. No, yeah, I don't know either, Ben, obviously. I won't be stunned if it is cancelled. But I think that Punisher season 2 might just squeak out past the gate.
I'd like to see a Punisher season 2. It's in my top 3 of the Marvel Netflixes.
Yeah. You have to look back, though, Ben, and think about it. The first couple of series were Daredevil season 1, Daredevil season 2, and Jessica Jones season 1.
Yes.
Very well received, very good. Daredevil season 2, not as good, but, still strong. Luke Cage season 1, massive viewership, but really dropped off after Cottonmouth was killed.
Not a lot of cultural impact either.
No, after Cottonmouth was killed.
Yeah,
then
I don't know whether this speaks to the relatively low participation of African American males at Comic-Cons, but I don't see many Luke Cage cosplays.
It's also you don't see many Netflix cosplays really because they're basically just people in normal clothes. I was thinking, a friend of the podcast, our friend John.
Yes, John, friend of the podcast.
John, he was on the podcast a very long time ago. I'm going to ask him to be Kingpin at next year's Dublin Comic Con, and I might go as Black Suit Daredevil, and he go as Kingpin, and we'll have a fight and get kicked out.
Are you going to paint R.I.P. across your chest?
Well, I'll have to now. But anyway, yeah, I think they'll squeak Jessica Jones out and they'll squeak Punisher out, and that'll be the end of it. Yeah,
that's a shame. Although how far they could have taken this is beyond me, Michael. I don't know how much longer they could have run it.
Ben, I follow a toy YouTube channel on Twitter and on Instagram called Toy Galaxy, and Dan, who hosts Toy Galaxy, said that it wasn't so much as he was disappointed Daredevil was cancelled. He said, think of it as a satisfying end of the arc for that character, which is actually very true.
I haven't seen the new season, but also...
Get out of here, you son of a bitch. Why haven't you seen it?
Fair enough. I don't have Netflix time, Michael. I'm coming up to final critique week, so it's all hands on pencils. I don't really have time for TV.
I'll critique you. Ben, in other news,
yes.
At least the shows will be able to move to Disney Plus, the new Disney streaming service.
Do you think they will, Michael?
No, they won't, Ben.
Disney. I think they're just going to recast and wipe the slate.
I don't think they'll do that, but Disney have already said that they won't be transferring the shows across.
That's a shame. I'd like to see more Charlie Cox Daredevil.
You would just like to see more Cox in general.
More Cox in general.
Gotcha.
Zing. Some casual homophobia there from Michael. As if looking at cocks was a bad thing.
Yeah.
This is the 21st century, Michael. You can look at a cock all you like.
Oh, that's what it feels like when I do it to you.
Cocks for everyone.
Oh, no,
Michael.
that's so mean. Ben, anyway, there won't be any room for cocks on Netflix because they're aiming a bit higher. They're aiming a bit bigger with movie stars.
It's a Cox-free zone.
Yeah, because they've announced that the first show they're going to produce will be called Vision and the Scarlet Witch.
Oh, boo. Boo. That's boring.
Do you think it'll be about their love affair?
I don't see how it couldn't be.
It's all very it's all very Avengers 4 dependent.
They just want superheroes riding, I suppose.
Yeah. So maybe there will be cocks.
I mean, there's no harm in it if you want to see superheroes, right? Look, that's up to them. I personally don't think that the Scarlet Witch could carry a show.
Well, that's why Vision is on board now, I think.
I'm also not sure. I'm assuming it's the same actors.
Well, you're the second person who's asked that, Ben. I just assumed that it was. I didn't even go as far as saying I assume it was. But yeah, it has to be, though, doesn't it? It has to be.
But a man like Paul Bettany doesn't usually take on some television.
Or an Elizabeth Olsen. Ben,
Elizabeth Olsen.
I think the interesting thing is, though, it's not really television, is it?
No, it's streaming.
And, Ben, unlike the Netflix stuff, which is produced by Netflix, and unlike the Disney ABC stuff, which is produced by Marvel TV, boo! This will be produced by Marvel Studios. So Kevin Feige.
That bodes well to some degree, but let's not forget, Marvel hasn't always been the best of movie makers.
Not always, but I mean,
not always. They're improving steadily.
I don't necessarily agree with that. Everything they've released has been good to great. They've never released anything that's flat out bad. You name one thing that's bad. Michael. If you say Avengers, I'm going to neck kick you.
Avengers.
Neck kick.
Avengers.
Ben, you're coming back to Dublin.
Oh, God, I was just kicked through the screen in the neck, Michael. Oh, Christ. Put those weapons of mass destruction away, Michael.
Yeah.
Oh, bloody iron calf. Oh.
I do have very strong calves, actually.
You do, yeah. I've been terrified by them before.
We'll stick a picture up.
You're not to leave the room quite often when you...
Anyway, Benjamin. Let's stop talking about that, because, as you know, there's no point speculating. It might all turn out to be false anyway.
Yeah, I look, what I wouldn't put past Disney, because Disney's done it before, is bloody recasting for other shows. They've done that before. They kind of dip in and they say, oh, well, it's separate. You know, it's the character that's important. It's not really. People get very attached to the various actors that play.
Tell me one time that they've done that.
With all the Disney prequel stuff on the Disney Channel.
Oh, yeah, but fuck that shit. I think this is bigger than that.
You can say that, but this is Disney. Disney doesn't have to play by the rules.
You're right, Ben. That is worrying.
Disney doesn't have to play by the rules. Disney is building a monopoly, Michael, on our superheroes.
Yeah.
That's the aim here, is that we just have Disney. All out Disney.
Ben, I'm scared.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll ban music?
They'll ban music that doesn't have a chirpy teen female singing it, I suppose. Someone they can market till they have a drug problem or harm themselves.
Oh, Jesus. Are you talking about Miley Cyrus?
Miley Cyrus, Demi Lovato, Selena Gomez. Take your pick, really. Like, anyone who's worked for Disney generally doesn't come out unscathed.
Christina Aguilera did all right.
Paul Bettany, I'm afraid, is going to come away with a terrible cocaine addiction. Poor Chris Evans. God bless him.
He's so wholesome, though.
They make him sing in those tight outfits, though. That's not Disney.
Yeah,
that's not Disney. Speaking of odd rumors that are completely unsubstantiated, Michael.
Yes.
The Russo brothers were hinting at a little Chris Evans return to the uniform.
Oh.
Did you not hear about this?
No.
No, it's all rumorous.
Chris Evans is joining the actual army.
Apparently, no. Chris Evans is not hanging up the shield.
He's a real faker, isn't he, that Chris Evans guy?
I wouldn't turn down that paycheck either, though, Michael.
I know you wouldn't, Ben.
I'd milk that Disney money for all it's worth.
We had a little conversation before we went on air about what you'd do for money.
Oh, plenty of things, Michael. If you or anyone would like to know what Ben would do for money, just click below on the link.
On our Patreon link.
Go through to his Patreon link, and you'll see the various tiered reward systems available.
It's not great. Look,
it's a lot of ass stuff. It's a lot of ass stuff.
Ben, what? Oh no, Ben. As a quick diversion away from that, have you been reading any comic books lately?
I have, Michael. I have been reading comic books. Since we're so Marvel focused today, I think we'll take a little break and flick over to the DC end of things.
Go on.
First bit of great news is the first trailer for the bloody Outsiders was dropped.
I haven't seen that,
It's
Ben.
Young Justice Outsiders. Looks bloody good. Looks like a nice return to form. Characters we love.
This is an animated series, is it?
It's the animated series. The tagline was, "It's finally back," which is kind of cool. It's a nice nod to how much fans have been waiting for this show to come back. I'm very much looking forward to it, Michael. It's probably the best animated thing that DC puts out in terms of characterization and actual fluidity in the animation. That's very good. So that's coming. There's not much to talk about. It was kind of snippy bits from all over the series. You can't really piece anything together. There's a meta-human trafficking thing going on. That'll play a central conceit, I suppose. But the more interesting thing that I've been reading this week, Michael, is Heroes in Crisis. Heroes in Crisis by Mr. Tom King. Tom King has caused some controversy, as you know, on this podcast Tom King. Before, Michael. No, not your friend Tom King. DC Comics Tom King.
Oh, okay.
And rather interestingly, Heroes in Crisis is probably one of the most ambitious things that DC has done in a while in terms of humanizing their heroes. Very often, Michael, the top three in DC get a bit of a grilling when it comes to their relatability. Superman is too powerful. That's often the biggest criticism of Superman.
Yeah, he's going to fight Dr. Manhattan.
Wonder Woman is very similar. She's too powerful. And Batman is unbeatable. These are the three common complaints about this kind of thing. And I suppose you could say that about many heroes. And one of the biggest struggles that DC has always had is power levels, Michael.
Yeah, go on.
They can't decide just how powerful the characters are.
They're as powerful as they need to be, Ben.
Which is bad writing as a general rule.
Oh, that's interesting, because that's going to come up later.
Heroes in Crisis is very interesting in that it focuses around an organization called Sanctuary. Sanctuary is an organization that is dedicated to rehabilitating and providing counseling for superheroes.
Yeah.
You and I have spoken before about the trauma of being a superhero and how that's never really played with here or there. Marvel has done it with Iron Man once or twice in films where he's suffering from PTSD. Mm-hmm. This is a very interesting look at the big moments in DC heroes' careers and how it's affected them. For example, each issue has a dossier file with like a Polaroid, kind of similar to a case file. But it's of that hero's darkest moments. So, for example, Superman died in the Death of Superman arc.
Did that still happen post New 52?
Well, see, this is the interesting thing, Michael.
Sorry.
It's dredging up all the history of DC, that some of which might have been retconned. For example, the Aquaman one is him holding his severed hand.
Oh, but that didn't happen anymore.
The Batman one is him having his spine broken.
Did that happen? I'm not sure if that happened.
I'm not sure. So it's an interesting look. More than that, it humanizes the heroes in a fantastic way, because at the beginning of each issue, there's a 9-panel grid, and it's a superhero talking to what you assume is a camera.
Every time you say humanizing, I have the song Womanizer by Britney Spears in my head, but now it's I'm a humanizer, we're a humanizer, DC's a humanizer. Fair
enough. You could probably sell it to them as a marketing ploy.
Go on, looking at a camera.
But they look at camera and they confess what makes it difficult. So one of the really interesting ones is Batman. He sits down, he actually takes his cowl off, and he says, I hire people to fight alongside me. I train them, I look after them, and I get them killed. So that's his big trauma. It's not what you expect. Wonder Woman refuses to speak.
I can't imagine Batman going to therapy.
Neither could I, and this is where Tom King is beginning to get a bit of a backlash. I suppose the very interesting thing that kicked this series off, Michael, is that everyone who was at the Sanctuary facility was murdered.
Oh.
So what's really interesting here is Wally West Flash is now dead.
Okay.
Lagoon Boy is dead. This is not spoilers, by the way.
Right.
This is the central conceit of the thing. It's in the blurb.
Okay. Ben, who did it? Was it Hawk of Hawk and Dove?
So this is the way we're producing it. Initially, we're fed a red herring and we're supposed to think, well, spoilers for the series from this point on, in case anyone wants to go read it. The art is magnificent, by the way. I thoroughly recommend it.
What's it called?
Heroes in Crisis.
Oh, yeah.
Heroes in Crisis. Booster Gold is the red herring that we're given.
Okay. What are the red herring's powers?
The red herring is able to make anyone else the target of other people's hatred. It's very useful in the comic book industry. Many writers wish they had that ability.
Yeah, very good on the spot thinking there, Ben.
Tom King, I would imagine, is also the same, because
my friend
it's actually Harley Quinn. No, not your friend Tom Quinn. Harley Quinn is the one who's been murdering heroes.
Harley Quinn?
Yeah, so this is where Tom King is getting himself into trouble, especially with the last issue. Harley Quinn took on the trinity of DC heroes, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and she beats all three of them.
That doesn't make a lot of sense, Ben.
It doesn't make any sense, Michael.
She's just a woman with a bat.
One of the most insulting things to come out of this is that Superman says, she's as good as you to Batman.
Ridiculous.
Which is completely ridiculous. Naturally, Michael, fanboys are in an uproar.
Classic fanboys.
Many people didn't believe that Tom King could do this because he's been writing Batman for quite a while. They didn't think he would put him in this position. Many people wrote to Dan Didio, who is the chief publisher, the chief editor of DC at the moment. He's the man at the helm, saying that he is forcing his writers to push Harley Quinn because she's such a popular character.
Well, Ben, that's just how commercial art works. So they can suck a lemon on that one.
What's more interesting, Michael, is that Tom King has come out and said, no, completely my decision.
Of course he is. I mean, it's irrelevant anyway. He might be pushing Harley Quinn because Harley Quinn's a popular character.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter
what I'm
why.
saying there is, she is such a central focus in this series, Michael, that fans are now redubbing the comics, and there's various photoshops of it being Harley Quinn in Crisis. That's what it's called now. Anyway, what's interesting is Harley Quinn has gone toe-to-toe with Booster Gold, various villains from the DC universe, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman at the same time. This is the three of them working together against Harley Quinn, and she's beaten all of them. And now many fans are just dropping the comic because it's
very heavy.
Completely unbelievable. Well, it's a very heavy comic, but it's also completely unbelievable. Nobody really believes that Harley Quinn, despite being a popular character and often fun, could go up against Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman at the same time and win.
That would be like you defeating me, Shane, and Rachel at the same time.
Not a chance, Michael. Not a chance.
No,
not a chance. Even on my best day,
yeah,
I could barely take a small infant, let alone the three of you.
Yeah,
Rachel alone would bury me.
Yeah, I know. She'd kill you.
Wouldn't have a hope. She's got all those wrestling moves.
Yeah, she knows a lot of moves.
Shout out to Rachel.
Yeah, hi, Rach. What are we saying again?
But
so then, do you remember, listener, a few months ago, Oh, Crimey Peeps?
It rings a vague bell in the back of the mind.
Oh, Crimey Peeps was a bit of an anti-Tom King. Not my friend Tom King, the writer Tom King.
Yes, who came up with the thing of all he does is punch his way out of situations. And sadly, I had to go back and reread that arc and agree with Crimey Peeps. He very often relies on that. More to the point, it's just very inconsistent writing with regards to power levels and how he does it. So I think the big insult and the thing that people find most insulting about Tom King's latest run in Heroes in Crisis is that Superman turns around to Batman and says, she's as good as you.
Is the fact that a slightly mad woman with a stick isn't able to fight Superman not a bigger issue? How does she fight them, Ben?
Basically, it's set up. They have her cornered, and she fakes sympathy for Wonder Woman. So she takes advantage of Wonder Woman's kind of bias towards helping women in need. I suppose she takes advantage of that. She then takes the lasso of truth off Wonder Woman,
who's super fast
backwards. Yeah, who's super fast. Yeah. Somersaults backwards onto Batman, wraps the rope around his neck, and holds him to ransom. Let alone, okay, fair enough. The lasso of truth does bind you instantly. You can't
I know, but I mean, like Superman.
Fair enough.
Superman would be able to move faster than it would take her to do a backflip.
Yeah. Also, Wonder Woman would be able. Wonder Woman cannot just be kicked backwards by a somersault.
Yeah, Superman could fly around the world in the time it would take you to do a backflip. Yeah,
so that's the first conceit. So she catches Batman off guard. Fair enough, he's only human. But
most of the time.
In other comics, Batman reacts very quickly to things like that. Or doesn't trust people enough to let them get close to Wonder Woman.
I don't think, Ben, that this is necessarily a problem we're having with the Harley Quinn comic so much as comic books.
It's a varying power level issue. But anyway, just to give you the really ridiculous part.
Go on, yeah.
She uses the lasso of truth to find out where Batman keeps his kryptonite.
Right.
Okay.
Up his butt.
Earlier in the issue, the Trinity are having a debate over one of the cadavers found at the Sanctuary.
Right.
About how Batman must have been spying on Sanctuary.
Now, I think a cadaver is a medical term for a body that you're going to chop up.
Corpse, I guess, then would be probably the more accurate term.
I think so.
Sorry, too much time bloody arting.
They're
all cadavers to me now, Michael.
Yeah.
Which is worrying for my mental health. But overall, so what happens is they're having a debate over one of the corpses. And Superman says, tell us who it was, Bruce. And Wonder Woman says, you were definitely spying on the people at Sanctuary. Because Batman would do that to find out all their weaknesses, I suppose. But he says, no, I couldn't because I was going there. It had to be anonymous. Do you understand? So they believe him, and then he says, so Superman says, you definitely have kryptonite on you now. And
it's up your butt.
Says, no, I don't. No, I don't. I don't carry it all the time. Which is a lie. But Harley Quinn then later exposes that by using the lasso of truth. So she gets the kryptonite ring, and she escapes.
Where was it?
Now, it was in his pouch on his belt, on Batman's belt, naturally. Now, this stops Superman, but it does not excuse why Superwoman doesn't go and get her. Harley Quinn then crashes out the glass and runs away.
Just normal running.
Doesn't chase after her.
Who's Superwoman?
Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman doesn't chase after her.
Yeah.
Superman doesn't get up and recover from the kryptonite and chase after her. None of that happens.
Yeah,
they
ridiculous.
Just let her get away. Now, Superman can see her because they have a telescopic vision scene.
Yeah, they could have just lasered her.
None of them chase her. None of them.
Yeah.
None of them, Michael.
You've gone a bit, who's that guy from Nevermind the Buzzcocks? You've gone a bit him.
Bill Bailey?
No, Simon Amstel.
Oh, no.
Yeah, sorry. That's what happens when you talk about Harley Quinn.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Ben. I don't like the sound of that, but, I haven't been reading our comics, so it doesn't really affect me.
But it's a bit of a slap in the face to DC fans. I mean, I think the bigger slap is that Superman says that to Batman. I know that seems ridiculous, but they're supposed to be basically brothers to some degree, and I think it's more of Tom King being like, "Oh, look what I can do with these characters," but also at the same time there is some degree of paying homage to. I suppose it would be similar in when they made Captain America a Nazi.
Look,
yeah, it's shocking, but also fuck you for doing that to a character.
At the end of the day, Ben, at the end of the day, there's no reason for Batman to be involved with Wonder Woman and Superman. He's nowhere near powerful enough. The reason he became powerful enough is because he's popular, and when he was popular, they made him powerful, and now that's happening with Harley Quinn. I can't see any real justification for not letting Harley Quinn become inexplicably powerful.
Well, at the end of the day, Michael, I am a DC fanboy, and I suppose I'm a little bit butthurt about the whole situation.
Because you got your kryptonite ring up there. Ben, speaking of things
and you can have your kryptonite ring up there for $27.95 on the Patreon account. You'll get a personalised video with your name.
Oh, Jesus. Ben.
Just kidding. It's $28.50. Go on.
Ben. Let's bloody move on. Ben, have you seen this week's new big movie release, 2018's Robin Hood?
No.
No, you haven't, have you, Ben?
No, I haven't.
Do you know anyone who has, Ben?
No, I don't.
Yeah, you know why, Ben?
Because it's a completely irrelevant legend and nobody has any connection to it anymore, so the relevancy affects sales.
Oh my God. Jesus, that's a bit much. Ben, do you want to hear some figures about the new Robin Hood movie?
I love a figure. Go on.
Okay. Reportedly, Ben, and studios are a bit quiet about this, but it cost $100 million to make.
Oof.
Ben,
Michael,
that is a lot of money.
That's a fuck ton of money.
It really is, isn't it?
Ton. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Someone who's really rich, like you're really rich if you have more than about 50 million to your name.
Oh, that's proper rich. That's
really rich, and you still couldn't make Robin Hood. Good. It cost about $100 million to make. That doesn't include marketing, although, Ben, I've seen so little marketing it can't have been too expensive. Got them. I got them.
Zing.
And Ben, so far it has made €22 million, but $22 million back.
Which is fuck all, Michael, for that level of investment. It
came out 7th in the box office in its opening weekend in America.
Tanked.
7th. Tanked. It's on track to be the biggest flop of the year by a long way.
And that's at the end of the fucking year.
By a long way.
Like, that's rough.
Now, Benjamin, I also haven't seen it. That's how poorly this was marketed.
That's the end of fucking Taron Egerton's career, anyway.
It's a real shame, because I like him.
He's a good actor. Eddie the Eagle was great. Yeah. The first Kingsman was very good.
Yeah.
Second Kingsman left a lot to be desired, including a weird tracker insertion scene.
Yeah. Also, it's he is ever so slightly shorter than me, which I like in an actor.
You love that in an actor.
Yeah.
If we lived in Michael's world, all actors would be below 5'6".
I am well above 5'6". Ben, he the internet says he's almost the same height as me. I don't believe that. I think he's shorter.
The internet's a notorious fucking liar, Michael.
Yeah, I think between the internet and Hollywood, they're
he's
notorious
about my
liars.
height, I think he's about my height.
The internet claims 1.75 meters.
I'm 5'8".
I don't know what that is. I don't do imperial measurements,
you don't
Ben.
do feet. I'll look it up for you. You keep going anyway.
Keep it metric, Ben.
I'll
We suffered
keep it
through
metric.
800 years of imperial regime, so...
Speaking of 800 years...
See what I did there, Ben? That was a whole conceit there.
For any of our English listeners, not that we have too many, I
don't
suppose.
think we do. No, it's not the
Well,
most.
we'll have even less by the end of this episode.
Even fewer,
But
Ben.
to any of our Irish listeners, lads, if you want to go up the back there and get the old balaclavies have been keeping for a special occasion
Yeah.
and the flag, this is going to be a fun episode where we just take a look at the decline of Britain's empire and how they're kind of fucked.
That's not what this episode is about, Ben.
Yeah, there's going to be Brexit, imperialism, lack of imperialism, declining sovereignty, that kind of thing. Oh, lads, strap in.
Ben, I thought we were going to talk about if British legends were still relevant and popular in today's modern world.
They're not, Michael, and there's several reasons for that, including imperialism, lack of imperialism, declining popularity. No, look, the way we wanted to look at this, Michael, was, first of all, you sent me a little WhatsApp message, and you said, how about King Arthur and the decline of that legend for this week's pod? And I said, that sounds great, because I love an old myth or legend. You know yourself. We both do, Michael.
Oh, yeah.
So off I did trot and did a little bit of research on each thing. So I think, luckily, Robin Hood is a great segue for us. There are a number of kind of public domain characters, if you want to look at them that way.
All right, I do.
Many of whom have strong British history because Victorian literature shaped a lot of those public domain characters. So if you'd like to take a look at your Draculas, your Robin Hoods, your King Arthurs.
Yeah, go on.
These films have been remade in recent years. We had Dracula Reborn with Luke Evans.
Yes.
We had
Ben.
King Arthur. Yeah.
Isn't your conceit hurt slightly by the fact that Dracula was written by an Irishman?
It was written by an Irishman, but it was an Irishman who strongly related to Victorian London and set his entire thing against the backdrop of British Empire. Mm-hmm. So I think we can include it there. Right. Moving on from there, we have King Arthur, which was recently remade by Guy Ritchie.
I have some figures on that, Ben. Do you want to hear that? Can I interrupt you? Do you want to hear those figures?
Yes, absolutely. Give me the figures, Michael.
King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, Ben, came out in 2017. Directed by Guy Ritchie. It cost $175 million to make.
Fuck.
And it made back 50. And
Christ almighty.
Absolutely massive box office bomb. You could almost go as far as to say last year's Robin Hood.
I think that's a fairly fair parallel.
Yeah. A lot of people who have seen both, neither of us, have said Robin Hood almost feels like a sequel.
I have seen very much. I have seen King Arthur by Guy Ritchie, mainly because I'm a huge Guy Ritchie fan, and I think generally he gets a bad rap.
You just like the lads having banter in Londinium.
I think one of the interesting things, perhaps, first of all, I thought the two Sherlock films from Guy Ritchie were quite good. That puts me at odds with a lot of people.
Me, for example.
Yeah, sure. I enjoyed them quite a bit. Most of the point, regardless of what Guy Ritchie does, I think as a director and stylistically speaking, he's probably one of the most interesting visual directors on the planet. Where I think that fails horribly, especially in King Arthur's case, is he obsesses over the visuals, and it's almost like he crams too many visuals in and loses focus on individual characters.
Right.
Visually speaking, I think one of the most interesting scenes in his directorial history is the run through the forest in the second Sherlock Holmes.
Go on.
Where he uses the body cams to capture the footage.
Right.
And run through the forest. It's a fascinating scene. It does an awful lot in terms of building tension, history. And he uses techniques that have become very pastiche, for example, slow motion. Mm-hmm. But he uses them in very interesting ways, and I think it carries a lot of his stuff. One of the best films I think he put out in the last couple of years that completely flopped, again, was The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Right.
I think one of the best blocked, visually composed films I've seen in the last while. Henry Cavill was very good in it. Armie Hammer was excellent in it. It was a great film, but it flopped. And I think it's because Guy Ritchie, more than anyone, has somehow lost his focus on what makes interesting characters and has kind of switched it to making a very slick film. He makes the films very slickly, but his characters go by the wayside.
They're very slick, and it's just the lads having the banter.
Yeah. More importantly than that, I think where he's failed, especially in King Arthur, and where I think things like Robin Hood fail, and it did from the trailer look like a spiritual sequel to that Robin Hood thing. I think that time in Britain's history is very much past. It is literally the past, Ben. I know. But in terms of relevancy to audiences, it's such a far cry from anything they could possibly relate to.
Go on.
And the reason being for that is, first of all, let's start with the King Arthur myth. The King Arthur myth has its roots in the 5th or 6th century. He was an actual figure, but how realistic he was is very much up for debate. He was a real figure. He was not magically imbued or chosen or anything like that. He was originally a British leader against the Saxons in the 5th and 6th century, and he actually defended Britain against Saxons. Now, the Saxons were the invader in this particular part, and it's important when we talk about this one, Michael, to look at the word invader and defender. These are two words that are going to come up again and again. Not Marvel's invaders and defenders. I can feel the joke bubbling. I can see it in the corner of your eye, Michael. I'm not letting you have it. Invaders and defenders, not Marvel, are very important in this particular case. So that's the root of the legend. And then
Ben,
all the way...
Why was the King Arthur film then set in a kind of later medieval period?
Because, Michael...
Yeah.
The famous version of the legend, the one that made him massively popular much later, came from the 12th century. And I think when his researchers were taking a look... 5th and 6th century is very, very, very primal.
Yeah. It's basically people in fields and huts.
And fields.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll remember that Clive Owen played that version of the character with Keira Knightley.
Yeah, they were basically savages.
An old King Arthur film. They went all the way back to the Romans and had a look at Celts versus Romans. And to be honest, that's not Guy Ritchie's style. No. He couldn't possibly work with that.
He didn't have Londinium in it.
Yeah, this was basically Londinium with bloody brick walls in it. That was basically what we had. Big stone walls, Londinium. And Arthur was just a bit of a cockney lad.
He's likely lads in it.
I think the opening scene to King Arthur was basically his opening scene to Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, where your man packs up all his Del Boy gear and does a runner.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a whole thing. There was a whole battle scene first with Eric Bana fighting inexplicably gigantic elephants.
Yeah, inexplicably gigantic.
Because there's no other gigantic animals.
There's
a giant snake.
Yeah, but even then.
Go on, sorry. What am I saying? Why am I interrupting you?
What we look at then is a man called I'm going to get this wrong, but I have it here in front of me.
What an unusual name.
His name was Geoffrey of Monmouth. Monmouth. Yeah, I'm assuming it's Monmouth in that traditional kind of English pronunciation.
It could be, bloody English names. It could be Montborough.
Yeah, we just don't know.
The English.
Bloody Brits. Anyway, I'm going to call him Jeff. Jeff wrote a little book called Historica de Britonum. And it basically took a look at the royal order in Britain at the time.
Right.
And this is where you get Guinevere, this is where you get Merlin, this is where you get the idea of Uther of Pendragon, and most importantly, Michael, this is where you get the idea that kings are chosen. They have birthright to throne. Very important. Now, Geoffrey of Monmouth was part of the court.
Right.
At this time, there was a lot of humming and hawing about how people got chosen to rule. This legend came along at just the right time to talk about great British leaders and how they are born to be
the born king. They keep saying the born king in 2017's King Arthur, The Legend of the Sword.
So if that's what you're trying to do, that's a great way to make a peasant say, "No, shut the fuck up, peasant. He's born to rule.
Yeah.
That's how this shit works. That's a great way to do that. Now, we get a lot of conventions like that. You'll notice I didn't say the word Lancelot.
You didn't, Ben.
Lancelot is a central one. He bloody rides Arthur's wife
He's a real
as
son
we
of a
go
bitch.
along. Now, that's in a secondary tale written by a Frenchman, classic French.
The French coming here stealing our
and a big
wives.
blonde ride and a bit of fucking running around on your wife. Classic French. So the man who came up with that, I can't say his first name, but we're going to say Detroit. Detroit is the man who comes up
What's
with
his
that.
first name?
Crethian.
Oh, okay.
It's very 12th century. Crethian Detroit. Or Crethian Detroit, if
Very
you want
good,
to
yeah.
throw that in there. Anyway, he is the one who added Lancelot and the Holy Grail. So you're probably most familiar with King Arthur and the Holy Grail. That's the concept. But that didn't exist before the secondary telling. Now, this was 12th century as well. It was a little bit later. But this is the French influence. And in these two stories, one is very interesting because it looks at King Arthur specifically and the qualities that he has as a leader.
Yeah.
And then the French version looks at the knights around King Arthur. So King Arthur is the thing that ties all these knights together. All the stories are about the knights around the round table. So I guess, in a way, the more traditional King Arthur legends are the French version, where you hear about the knights of the round table.
And King Arthur is almost a side character.
He is. He's just the thing that binds the stories together. He's your MacGuffin, I guess, if you want to look at it.
Yeah,
that
well,
way.
I mean, that was one of the ideas I had for our proposed Moon Knight season 2, which we'll talk about in another episode.
Yes, we are going to have a season 2 of Moon Knight at some point.
Yeah.
It's going to come on the podcast eventually.
Yeah.
But rather interestingly, Michael, the original 12th century story came at a time when there were a lot of warring factions within English society. So you had some people wanting to be king, other people wanting to be king, and a lot of humming and hawing about how that was chosen and stuff like that. This version of King Arthur, the one that Jeff came up with, is meant to unify people as one man ruling over Britain. Not England, Britain.
Classic
So,
English.
There are Welsh tones too. That's where Uther Pendragon comes from. Pendragon is a famous Welsh kind of name.
Okay.
There are Welsh undertones, and he is the man who unifies and defends Britain against its invaders, be they supernatural or otherwise.
Ah.
Now,
Yes.
when is the last time you thought of Britain being invaded?
World War II.
World War II. Close enough. Fair enough. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because the character, after unified the country, kind of dips off a little bit. It's a very persevering myth. But then a man called T.H. White came along at the beginning of the 19th century.
Right.
Okay, at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th.
Is this the
And
guy who invented white privilege?
This is the guy who... No, it's not him, but it probably could be.
Okay.
He came along and he wrote a book called The Man Who Would Be King.
I've heard of that.
And what's different about this telling of King Arthur is it focuses on his values as a person. So that's 3 very distinct reasons to tell the story. And yet again, it's used as propaganda because this was the time of World War I. And it was also coming close to World War II. It was in that region of time. And the focus in this one is on what makes a good Brighton.
Brighton.
Not Brighton, sorry, Bretonian. Britannia?
Oh, Britain?
Britain, yeah, but I'm not sure how to say it. But what makes a good British citizen?
Okay.
Someone who sacrifices for their country. Someone who fights on behalf of their country.
Someone who wears a hat.
It reeks, Michael. It reeks
You go on.
propaganda.
Go on.
And so what I find interesting about that, and why I think modern audiences don't relate to him as much, is King Arthur is very much about defending Britain. Britain, during the Victorian period, when his legend dipped off, was very much the invader of other countries.
Right.
This wasn't defending Britain. They were invading other countries. They were expanding Britain.
Do you then think that the recent kind of attempted resurgence of these characters, and to me, Ben, what it seems like is they're trying to bring these characters back, but they've noticed that people love superheroes and shared universes, so they're trying to bring these characters back as superheroes.
Well, I think that's definitely true.
Do you
But
think... Go on.
Go on. No, you go ahead.
Do you think that it's influenced by this kind of slight resurgence in British nationalism and feeling of being invaded, that it's coming from that, or that they were hoping to make money from that?
I honestly think I'm possibly tapping into that. Absolutely. I wouldn't put that past studios at all. I possibly think it's missing the mark because they're trying to do two things. They're trying to tap into that vein of nationalism, but they're also Americanizing these tales something fierce.
Ferocious.
They're using British actors, but they're using a bloody blockbuster formula.
An American blockbuster formula.
But that doesn't really defend everything. But it's interesting. I think in terms of pure relevancy, British people don't see themselves as weak or in need of defense. British people see themselves as the empire.
Yeah.
And I think the national narrative during the time of Queen Victoria became very much, we are the empire, not we are one sovereign land defending the outsider, defending against the outsider.
But, I mean, that makes them weird characters then to try and sell internationally.
Yeah, I know. It's maybe that's the other big reason. No British propaganda figure is ever going to do well in the United States.
Well, you say that, but then Captain America is very popular internationally. And Captain America is very much an American World War II propaganda character. But if you look at the Captain America character in the Marvel movies, he doesn't really have an American value system. He's very liberal and modern, and
he follows a very strong character arc of, I don't like bullies.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really care who the bully is, be it the US government invaded by Hydra, be it, infiltrated by Hydra, be it, a bad guy. He will always take the side of the underdog.
Yeah, and
that's how he's been written in the Marvel movies.
Having watched Captain America all three recently, and having watched King Arthur recently, Legend of the Stone, King Arthur says a lot, "You're dealing with England."
Yeah.
And I don't think Captain America ever says that. Well,
yeah, because nationalism is misplaced if you want to market on a mass audience level. You can't have... It's very anti-culturalism. And I think one of possibly the bigger thing there, which I hadn't given much thought to, but now that you bring it up, is England is not predominantly white anymore.
Yes, it is.
Well, if you're looking at the big markets for cinema and stuff like that, London's not predominantly white.
I think it is still. I think I'm not necessarily arguing with your point here. I think I'm arguing with the use of the word predominantly.
Okay, predominantly is probably the wrong word. But the Victorian period also
overwhelmingly, maybe, is the word you're looking for. But white people certainly aren't the minority in England yet.
Fair enough. Someone's going to use this as an audio clip in their fucking pro-Brexit
court case
speech.
again.
No, in their fucking pro-Brexit. Even other nationalities are making fun of us, saying that we are not the predominant race in our country.
Even Paddy across the sea.
Nigel Farage is rubbing his fat, drunken hands with glee.
Farage has quite slim hands.
Yeah. But anyway, I think what's interesting is it's interesting to hear a man saying this is England, but also have a thing against people coming in from the outside. Like, the Victorian period reshaped England for better or worse. It changed the national narrative from invaded to invader, and it certainly allowed more demographics back into London.
Yeah, because they had nowhere else to go because they went and kept conquering them.
Yep. So they just kind of assumed that, well, if I'm a British citizen, then I can go to Britain.
Yeah.
You
keep coming here and telling us how great Britain is. I'm going to go and have a look.
I'm going to go check it out. And then they got offended by that, naturally. So, I don't know. It's an interesting question, though, isn't it, as to why they keep being remade and flopping. I think also... Yes, if you're going to do a medieval film, do a medieval film. Don't do a modern film with a big medieval city. Like, don't have quippy Taron Egerton, who's just 2 minutes away from whipping out his iPhone.
Yeah.
At any point. No, I like Taron Egerton. And I like Charlie Hunnam. They're both solid actors. But I think they're trying to modernize something that resists modernization at its core level.
It's interesting, Ben, what you were saying earlier about the idea of born kings not really being very popular these days. And we've talked about that in the past, about things like Marvel's Inhumans, how it was very hard to support the royal family. And yet, a mere 15 years ago, The Lord of the Rings was massively popular.
And Aragorn is a born king.
Yeah.
Aragorn proves his mettle, though.
He does, but so does King Arthur.
Yeah. But he loses his wife to a bloody Frenchman, doesn't he? can't respect that in Britain. Can't respect that. I can't get behind that.
Have you ever read any of the Marvel Comics UK stuff?
I can't say I've read it extensively.
Because, as you know, in Marvel Comics they have Captain Britain, Brian Braddock.
Ooh.
Twin brother of Psylocke.
Oh, I love Psylocke.
Yeah, Psylocke when she was British, not Psylocke when she's Asian. Although they're still twins, I suppose. He's twins with her mind. Look, it's complicated.
Oh, look.
A lot of his extraneous details, a lot of his side characters, and a lot of his situations and settings come from Arthurian legend.
Mm-hmm.
He's, for example, it turns out that he's chosen by Merlin to protect Britain across the multiverse. Each Britain has a protector chosen by Merlin. And there's lots of stuff about Avalon or Avalorn. And
Avalon, by the way, is the traditional Latin term given to
Camelot.
No, it's like Hibernia, or Avalon was the Cumbria. Is it Cumbria? I can't remember. Possible Ben's retractions there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. I'll look that up and have it for next week's podcast.
But isn't it interesting that Captain Britain has an interesting visual design. He's had a couple of different suits. Hold on, I have to sneeze.
Fuck off, Union Jack. Podcast gold.
Oh, excuse me very much. He has a couple of different visual looks. One like really a beefeatery kind of thing, but then he ends up just in a Union Jack. But there's no sign of him breaking out. There's no sign of him. There's no rumblings about him getting a TV series.
No, he's never mainstreamed.
He's never in video games. If he's ever in the animated series, it's for 2 or 3 seconds standing in the background.
What are his parents? Or powers? What are his parents?
Interestingly, Ben, as you said, his powers are, because he's magical, his powers are as strong as they need to be. Which is interesting when you said that earlier. You know, the classics: flight, super strength, invulnerability. He's a lot like the more he has his shit together, the more powerful he is.
That's like the Gladiator character.
It is quite a bit like Gladiator. Yeah. With Gladiator, it's all about confidence.
Yeah.
With Captain Britain, it's about keeping his shit together. But they are very similar.
I don't like that power. That's literally giving yourself license for varying power levels.
Well, that's why the writer, was it Alan Moore? I think it was Alan Moore.
Is it Alan Moore?
Yeah, I think it was Alan Moore who came up with that idea. And in a way, Ben, it's a very realistic attitude to take for a comic book writer. Because
it's the only one, I suppose. Because
you're going to have to admit that this isn't real. And you're going to create situations that your characters need different powers for. Yeah. So you might as well say, look, fuck it. It depends on how he's feeling.
Fuck it. Fuck it.
I'll at least say, like, look, fuck it. It depends on how Captain Britain's feeling, rather than, look, fuck it. Depends on what corner I've written myself into.
Everyone loves a corner now and then, Michael.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with an old corner, as long as you can just barrel your way out of it, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose.
Look, it's a complicated issue, Michael. How do the listeners feel about nationalism in comics? Let us know down below. This is an interesting topic. Do you have any? If we have any English listeners, please don't hate us. And second of all, let us know why stuff like that does or doesn't resonate with you. Sorry, I had a moment there, my tongue stopped working. If you think these legends are out of date, do you think they represent a bygone Britain that can't really be reconnected with? Let us know down below. We'd love to know down below. More to the point, has anyone actually seen the new Robin Hood film?
I don't think so, Ben.
What happens in it? Because we haven't, and we probably won't.
Ben, I should probably point out that for this episode of the podcast, I watched 1991's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. That's 2 hours and 35 minutes, and now we've run out of time, and I haven't been able to talk about it. So that was the biggest waste of my entire life. I hope you're happy.
Oh, lovely.
So we're having a bloody future episode on Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. because there's no way I'm watching that whole thing for no reason.
What even is Kevin Costner? What even is Kevin Costner?
We'll do
anyway,
a bloody greatest hits of Kevin Costner someday.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are on Instagram, we are on YouTube, we are on iTunes. We need the reviews.
Give us the reviews,
please,
sons of bitches.
If you love us or hate us, let us know on iTunes. They don't really care as long as you're gaining traction. As always, thank you very much for listening. Bye.
Bye.